Today, we're gonna look at John Oliver's recent segment about tech monopolies. As you can see, this video already has over 3 million views, 3,700,000 views. This is John Oliver last week tonight. It's on HBO. The YouTube channel almost has 9 million subscribers. And I guess he's going to talk about big tech monopolies and why we need regulation. For those who are unfamiliar with John Oliver's history, remember that John Oliver was one of the loudest net neutrality alarmists, stressing for years, made multiple segments about how we need net neutrality. And he even told his viewers, hey, go to this website and demand that the FCC keep net neutrality intact. And as I've said, net neutrality was repealed, 4 or 5 years ago? We were told that one consequence of a net neutrality repeal would be that streaming services like Netflix would get throttled, would get ruined. And 5 years later, now people complain that there are too many streaming options to keep up with, including John Oliver himself on a recent segment he did just a few weeks ago.
Are supposed to have choice. Just look at all the streaming services out there. There's a Blockbuster 2.0, superheroes and old racism, anime, probably crashing on you right now, no idea, and until recently, News Quibi. That is arguably too much choice.
Oh, so now we have too much choice. Oops. All right, so that's John Oliver. Went from saying net neutrality repeal is gonna destroy streaming services. Now we have too many streaming services to choose from. Oh, well, I guess John Oliver, he might get it right this time. Let's see.
Specifically, we're going to talk about the fact that our experiences on the internet are now dominated by a very small handful of companies who are getting pretty used to throwing their weight around. In 2020, the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust released a massive 450-page report.
Oh, yeah, Antitrust. And for those who don't know, I've made videos dedicated to the issue of antitrust alone. And the first video I ever made was called The Myth of the Monopoly. And my opinion is that all antitrust laws belong in a shredder.
You're goddamn right.
Detailing anti-competitive conduct by Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Alphabet. That's the parent company of Google. And
so 4 companies, I guess, equals a monopoly. This is a common tactic from monopoly alarmists. They make a big fuss about monopoly, and then you suddenly see how slippery the slope gets, because then they talk about how 4 companies, I guess, are a monopoly. And it's interesting how often this stuff is framed with segments like this. I guess today we're not going to count other alleged big tech monopolies like Twitter or TikTok or Netflix or Microsoft or Snapchat or Sony or Spotify. I guess those companies don't count as big tech monopolies for this segment. And even with these 4, they're often competing with one another. But I guess 4 companies, it's not enough competition.
Findings couldn't have been clearer. Each platform serves as a gatekeeper over a key channel of distribution, allowing these giants to pick winners and losers throughout our economy.
Oh, no. And John Oliver, he strikes me as the kind of guy who is not entirely against picking winners and losers. He's just jealous that he's not the one picking winners and losers.
Okay, but second, a big thing these companies are accused of doing is suppressing their competition so completely that we never actually know if someone else could do it better because they'll never get a fair chance to try. That is the problem here. It's not that tech companies are inherently bad because they are big, it's that they're engaging in anti-competitive behavior. And here's where, unusually, I actually might have some good news because there are 2 bills before Congress right now with bipartisan support that could curtail at least some of big tech successes. But for reasons that we will get into later, if they don't pass...
So there are 2 bills right now that are targeted at big tech monopolies.
In the next month or so?
That's what the Senate is focused on. We have inflation, not to play the whataboutism game, but we have some real problems to deal with. Inflation, high gasoline prices. And I guess that's going to be fixed by telling Amazon that they can't give preferential treatment to Amazon brand products on their fucking search results.
they're not likely to pass at all. So tonight, let's talk about tech monopolies, the hidden
He says they're not likely to pass at all. I hope they're not. I hope they don't get passed.
harm that they can do and how best to address that. And let's start with a tiny bit of history, because in the past, the US has actually taken strong action to break up harmful monopolies. In the early 20th century, we broke up Standard Oil.
And why do we break up Standard Oil? This is another topic I've talked a lot about, the issue of Standard Oil alone. I did this in a recent video a few weeks ago. And a lot of people don't know that even if you buy into this monopoly alarmism, by the time Standard Oil was broken up, by any way you measure it, they had fewer than 50% control of the market that they were in, whether it be refining, whether it be oil production. But how did Standard Oil become so large and successful in the first place? They did it by innovating, by maximizing efficiency, by bringing down costs and prices for consumers throughout the world. Couldn't we use a Standard Oil these days with the high gasoline and energy prices we're seeing? Wouldn't we like someone to bring oil prices down by like 80%? But I guess back in the late 19th, early 20th century, they needed to be punished for the crime of maximizing efficiency and lowering prices.
That's just not smart.
And as recently as 40 years ago, the government took action against who else but at&t, our business daddy who left for cigarettes and never came home.
Yeah, at&t. And is John Oliver going to mention that at&t was essentially a government-granted regulated monopoly when telephone services were classified as common carriers, where competition was largely prohibited, often in the name of fairness, so that consumers in rural areas would not have to pay higher rates? You would think John Oliver might mention this, considering that, I don't know, he just did a segment on utilities.
This can do. And let's start with the single most important thing to know about utility companies, which is that for most of us, they're actually the only game in town.
If you want to go buy a country
To have choice. Just look at all the streaming. Oh, no idea, and until recently, News Quibi. That is arguably too much choice. But utilities operating as natural monopolies.
Natural monopolies.
It's back to the fact that around the start of the 20th century, we needed to build a nationwide power grid from scratch. And that obviously required a huge investment. Companies were only incentivized to do that with a guarantee that they'd be able to operate in a non-competitive environment. And at the time, that made sense. But
Yeah, and at the time, it made sense. And then I guess when they became too much of a monopoly, it didn't make sense anymore. Funny how that works. All right, we're going to jump ahead a bit.
Standard Oil, or literally any game of Monopoly. We didn't know it at the time, but at&t's dominance was seriously holding back innovation. But as soon as it wasn't controlling the phone lines and what you could attach to its network, many new products started proliferating, from the answering machine to the modem. The breakup of at&t was actually a key step in producing the internet revolution, giving us the web as we now know it, and Peter the ability to look up sports stats, surfing spots, and what we all know he was really doing there. The point is, when harmful monopolies end, innovation flourishes. And
When harmful monopolies end, innovation flourishes. Isn't it often the other way around? Doesn't innovation often come first? It came first with Standard Oil. Again, because Standard Oil, they were highly focused on innovating and maximizing efficiency. Even with at&t, the innovation came first. But notice that John Oliver, he talks about this issue in the context of technology companies. Companies that specialize in technology. And apparently they need to be punished now for innovating so that we can have more innovation. Guess that makes sense. Often these companies like Apple, they rise to prominence when competing with former alleged monopolies. Apple competed with Microsoft. Microsoft used to be accused of being a big scary monopoly. Amazon had to compete with eBay, and then Walmart. Walmart for decades was accused of being a big scary monopoly. Facebook had to compete with MySpace. Google had to compete with Yahoo. Even in this context, Apple's successful because they innovated with the smartphone and the iPhone and pretty much created this new industry of application. As you're going to see, John Oliver gets into the issue of Apple's App Store. Not sure that John Oliver genuinely cares about innovation and consumer choice in the first place, considering that with his Medicare for All segment a few years ago, John Oliver seemed rather willing, at least open to sacrificing stuff like innovation. and consumer choice for nationalizing the healthcare industry with Medicare for all. And this is a common double standard with many monopoly alarmists from the left. They're fine with sacrificing choice and innovation if it means giving the state a monopoly in areas like education and healthcare. Even monopoly alarmists on the right. John Oliver eventually mentions Josh Hawley in this segment and how he's on board with the proposed legislation. Josh Hawley often sounds the monopoly alarms in pursuit of his crusade against big tech. Woo! When it comes to big tech, Josh Hawley sounds the monopoly alarms and talks a big game about how we need competition and how competition leads to lower prices and innovation. But then Josh Hawley also wants to protect American businesses and American workers from overseas competition with tariffs and restrictions on international trade and restrictions on legal immigration. But this seems to be a common trend throughout history. A company innovates and then as a result captures a large share of the market, resulting in people willingly lining up for the company's goods and services. Then power-lusting politicians and their cheerleaders like John Oliver decide that the said product or service is some sort of, people suddenly have some sort of inalienable right to it because it's so popular, and thus the government needs to step in and tell these companies how to operate.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
When the government should really only step in when someone's rights are violated.
And I want you to bear that in mind as we talk about the monopolies of today, tech companies. And tonight, we're going to focus on just one way that they use their monopoly power, something called self-preferencing. It's when companies unfairly favor their own products on their own platforms, which have now become so big that most of us have no choice but to use them.
Oh no, not self-preferencing.
This is a particularly big problem with these three companies. And we're going to start with Apple, specifically its App Store, which is basically the only place to download software for your iPhone, which is already a little bit weird when you think about it, right? You can download any software you like to your desktop computer, but if you have an iPhone, Apple has set it up so that its App Store is the only game in town. And Apple has been accused of unfairly pushing its own apps to the top of search results. Now, the company denies doing this, but...
Yeah, and they sometimes do this in instances like if you go search the App Store right now for a podcast app, Apple will prefer its own podcast app over apps like Spotify. Oh no, let's get the fucking Senate involved with this.
The Wall Street Journal found Apple apps that generate revenue through subscriptions or sales like music or books showed up first in 95% of searches related to those apps. But regardless, perhaps more important is the stranglehold that Apple has on developers who want to get their apps onto your phone, because they are required.
And people have criticized people like Amy Klobuchar. She's one of the leading drafters. She's leading the charge on these new bills. When she comes from Minnesota, which is where a large corporation like Target is headquartered. And companies like Target, they do what John Oliver is shrieking about all the time. They develop their own brand name products and give them preferential treatment. They give them preferences. I mentioned this in a recent video when talking about Ralph's. How when I shopped at Ralph's, I ended up choosing the Kroger brand of macaroni and cheese over the Kraft brand because it was a third of the price. We know that Costco does this all the time with their Kirkland line of products. Nintendo does this with their online store. This is such a non-issue.
Required to use Apple's payment processor, which takes a huge piece of every dollar that customers spend on those apps and any digital purchases within them.
Apple takes a 30% commission on sales of apps and in-app purchases. So if an app costs $4.99 up front, Apple collects $1.50. Same goes for if you use an app to buy digital goods, like virtual weapons, or sign up for a subscription to a monthly service.
It's true, and that was pretty shocking to me, because it means that every time someone spent money on the Jeremy Renner app, something real people actually did to boost their posts about him so they could hashtag be...
All right, now, are these rates, are they too high? Maybe they are, but if we're not going to let Apple and Google set their own rates for this stuff, then who's going to set the rates? Who? Is it going to be Ted Cruz? Is it going to be Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, President Ron DeSantis in 2 years? Is it going to be Josh Hawley? Consider that Josh Hawley is on a crusade against online pornography, and now that we have Fox News commentators now calling for a ban on pornography. Again, here are the right-wing culture warriors coming here to save free speech from the woke social justice left.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
That's a whole other issue. But in general, conservatives are becoming increasingly obsessed and petty with their bullshit culture wars, resulting to political punishments, as we've seen the last few months. And now John Oliver wants to maybe give these pieces of shit control and power over setting stuff like rates on apps and internet services. Of course, if these power grabs ever get abused for political purposes, maybe by stifling online pornography, I'm sure John Oliver will come back, he'll put on another segment, and take zero responsibility for advocating for this shit, and essentially argue that the government intervention was not the problem, it's just that we had the wrong central planners in power. Well, this is one of the potential drawbacks with central planning. Sometimes someone you despise is going to have the political power.
Be seen by Jeremy Renner.
Sounds like John Oliver isn't putting much thought into this.
Again, something human beings wanted, in amounts ranging from $1.99 to nearly $100 actual dollars. Apple got a cut of that, and that is blood money right there. Apple makes literally billions and billions every year just on commissions on App Store.
Oh no, guys, Apple made money. Yeah, they're a fucking corporation. That's kind of what they're, that's kind of why they exist. John?
Purchases. And some app developers have tried to find ways around this. Tinder, for instance, charges a higher price if you subscribe through the app than if you do it on their website. And if you open Netflix on your iPhone and you don't have an account, you get a message reading, trying to join Netflix. You can't sign up for Netflix in the app. We know it's a hassle. After you remember, you can start watching in the app. And you can see why Netflix would do that. It doesn't want to...
Yeah, it sounds like Netflix. Companies like Netflix have found a workaround around these high rates. And in some sense, Netflix, they might be at the mercy of Apple's App Store. However, often when I stream, I use devices like Roku and my Sony PlayStation 4, two companies not mentioned in this big tech monopoly discussion. And yeah, sometimes it can be a hassle. For instance, I have a subscription with Sling TV, and there's no app for that on the PlayStation 4 store. Is this something that we need to get the Senate involved in to solve? I say. I remember having a similar problem years ago when I got my Kindle tablet reader from Amazon. And then I found out that Apple does not develop apps for products like the Kindle tablet, which I mainly got to read books on, which is why a large reason why I started to go to Amazon for stuff like ebooks, because Amazon does have Kindle apps for iPhones and Apple tablet devices, Macintosh. So I can read my my Amazon books on my Apple products, but I can't read my Apple ebooks on my Amazon products. Yeah, can it be annoying? Yeah, but is this, do we really need to get the federal government involved with this? Is this really a big fucking deal?
Lose a third of its subscription revenue to Apple because it needs that money to promote its Netflix Pride Month collection, which is absolutely great. Simply scroll by the dozen stand-up specials mocking the trans community and it's right there. Shine with pride, guys. And while Apple will say that it's lowered its commissions for certain small app developers and now even allows some apps to link to an external website and bypass commissions, a key reason that happened is that they were put under extreme pressure from lawsuits and from regulators overseas. And
So they did something John Oliver wanted after getting pressure, and John Oliver still thinks this is a big deal.
if you are thinking, well,
You can never please these fucking clowns.
Apple is not the only game in town, right? What about Google's App Store? They charge similarly high commissions to developers, and the fact is, over 99% of smartphones are part of either Google's or Apple's app ecosystem.
Yeah, there are app ecosystems that companies like Apple and Google developed. Again, Oliver wants to, he complains about how they want to pick winners and losers throughout the economy. These are aspects of the economy that these companies created. It's their market. Nobody owes anyone access to an applications market.
Let's actually talk a bit about Google now, because their App Store is clearly only a small part of their story. As I'm sure you know, they absolutely dominate online searches.
Last year, Google conducted 90% of the world's internet searches.
I also find it convenient that Oliver isn't mentioning the controversy involving the Parler app getting banned and other like right-wing apps. Not that I'm diving on grenades for right-wing apps, but I think it's pretty telling that he doesn't really mention this in this segment.
When billions of people asked trillions of questions, it was Google that provided the answers, using computer algorithms known only to Google.
They have this phrase they use, competition is just a click away. They have no competition. Bing, their competition, has 2% of the market. They have 90%.
Exactly. People use Google to the extent that Googling something is now a verb. You can't say that for any other search engine. No one has ever said, I'm going to Bing it, except for maybe Bing Crosby announcing he's about to masturbate, but that's it. And Google has exploited their market dominance in subtle ways having to do with the search results that it shows you. Because it used to be, when you Google something, you got a page that looked like this, a series of blue links to various pages across the internet that Google's algorithm had determined to be the...
And I guess Google should have just stopped there. No more innovating. We're done.
Most relevant. And that was the company's goal at the time. As its co-founder Larry Page said in 2004, most portals show their own content above content elsewhere on the web. We feel that's a conflict of interest. We want to get you out of Google and to the right place as fast as possible. But when you search for something today, you get a lot of Google content before anything else appears. In fact, the markup found Google devotes 41% of the first page of its results on mobile devices to its own properties and what it calls direct answers, meaning that a user would have to scroll nearly halfway down the page before reaching the first organic result in that search. Now, Google
oh no! Let's get the Senate involved.
Disputes their methodology, but think about what it is like when you search for something. Let's say you want to look up dolphin.
Oh yeah, I gotta jump ahead because he spends like 2 minutes on a bit.
One analysis found that 2/3 of searches on Google ended without ever clicking to another web property. And the thing is, information that Google feeds you in searches like that may have been copied from other sources, sometimes without their knowledge or consent. And if thinking, well, no, it's free information, why does it matter if I read it on Google or on the site that they took it from? Site traffic is one of the major tools that many websites, especially free ones, use to sell ad space. So taking away visitors to their site is essentially taking money out of their pocket. And when Yelp explicitly refused to have their data scraped, Google told them the only way to have...
John Oliver's talking like as if we're like still in 2003.
their site's content removed was for it to be removed from Google's general results entirely. And as the CEO of Yelp explains...
And again, I'm not here to, like, defend Google. Is this, I mean, is there something to be said about this issue? Maybe. Sounds pretty overblown, if you ask me.
That is basically a death sentence.
How important is that first page?
It's not even just the first page, it's the first few links on the page is the vast majority of where user attention goes and where the traffic flows.
So if you're not at the top of the page or the bottom of the first page or on the second page, that's going to affect your business.
Yeah, if you're on the second page, forget it. You're not a real business.
Exactly. And putting the merits of Yelp aside, Google's algorithm shouldn't determine whether or not someone's business is real. Frankly, that distinction should only be withheld if someone's business includes the words Instagram influencer, because that is not a job. You're not a business, you're just attractive, independently wealthy, and it's sunny outside. That is all that is happening there. And before Jim Cramer says, who cares? Build a better product and you'll land on the front page. The top results Google feeds you may not be the best ones. Take Google Flights. It used to be that if you Googled NYC to Boise, your top results would be links to sites like these. But now you'll almost always get this Google Flights widget at the top of the page, already set up so that you can stay on Google and find a flight without clicking anywhere else. And while you personally might scroll down past that, many don't. And the industry has felt this. As one travel analyst...
All right, so does John Oliver just assume that every customer in the world is just some bumbling ape? Maybe there's truth to this notion that a lot of people, they'll when they shop for stuff, they'll just stop at Google and accept whatever Google throws at them when searching for stuff like flights. And I would say that if people are doing that, they're pretty dumb to do that. And if they're going to be this lazy when shopping for stuff, then that's their problem to solve, not the government's. America, fuck yeah! You know, I often use Google to search for stuff like flights and hotels. And then I see if I can book directly with the company at the same price, especially with the airlines, because with airlines, they often offer you stuff like points and bonuses when you frequently fly with their airline, where you can get free flights and stuff in the future. So yeah, Google, they might not give you a full picture, but maybe people should not rely entirely on Google to shop for stuff in the first place. And John Oliver, he's going to go on to talk about how Amazon, how they use data to knock off products, and then they give preferential treatment, special treatment to their own products on their own website. And again, how is this different than when grocery stores do shit like this, going back to Kroger? What, are we gonna draft legislation telling Kroger and Ralph's that they're not allowed to sell fruit rings next to Fruit Loops or Crisp Berry Crunch next to Cap'n Crunch? Are we gonna tell Nintendo that whenever someone searches for a kart racing game on Nintendo's online store that they're not allowed to give preferential treatment to Mario Kart over, say, Nickelodeon Kart Racers or some other third-party racing game. Speaking of Amazon giving special treatment, and I don't mean to kiss Amazon's ass. Amazon, they make shitty tablet readers. I mentioned my tablet reader earlier. It's a piece of shit. Always was. Amazon's brand of toilet paper is shit. Pun intended. Okay, it's not terrible, but after trying it, I definitely prefer name brands like Charmin. It's a lot softer. Not to mention Amazon-owned companies like Whole Foods. They do annoying stuff like not offer plastic bags for groceries. Then you have Twitch, which I'm streaming on right now, but they allow communist dipshits to make millions of dollars on their streaming service. And I get why a lot of people don't like how Amazon seeks political favors from local governments, which I've also talked about before. But Amazon giving special treatment to their own products, is this really the worst thing in the world? Recently, Amazon offered a deal that I took advantage of. It was something like get $10 off when you spend $50 or more on their store of their own brand name products. And I got a bunch of stuff like paper towels. Got a bunch of garbage bags. I got a case of knockoff 5-hour energy drink shots. Also got $2 in digital credits for choosing delayed delivery, which I use to save on ebooks. Yeah, Amazon, they make it more affordable for people like me to read books.
Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book.
I would say this is a pretty good deal in these inflationary times. And I guess John Oliver, he thinks that the government needs to step in and stop people like me from saving money in the name of fairness or whatever. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I have a giant pimple on my forehead. And, I've had people tell me, other YouTubers tell me in the past that I should learn how to apply a little makeup for when things like this happen. And never got around to it. Oops. But now I have a large pimple, and I'm about to do a segment responding to John Oliver, and I can already see I'm going to be paying for this now for the rest of my life, for however long this video is going to be on YouTube. People who disagree with me, they're going to show up in the comments roasting me, saying stuff like, hey, buddy, why don't you learn to clean up your acne before you talk shit to John Oliver?
Well, excuse me, princess.
All right, guys, you know what? Have fun with that, okay?